Welcome to episode 7 of the design series, creating a custom computer case for a NAS with SOLIDWORKS xDesign. In this series, we're transforming standard PC components into a fully functional network-attached storage with a 3D printed case. Don't worry if you've missed previous episodes, links are in the description below. In the last episode, we created backplates to hold fans, buttons, and plugs. In this episode, we add a personal touch to this computer case. If you haven't recognized, this is a Star Wars theme. I start with front panels. I'd like them to have vents, but shaped like these ones here. So I create a simple extrusion with holes, fillets and chamfers, as we have done in all episodes so far. First I create the extrusion and I mate it to the case. I keep an offset of 1 mm on each side, so there is no interference. I do the same for second panel, actually the same part but duplicated. Again, 1 mm offset on each side. Now I can take care of the pattern itself. It is made from sketch slots of two sizes that complement each other. I start with the small one in the middle to leverage symmetry, then I sketch the larger one. It needs to be organized in a geometric layout, so I add some dimensions with the edge, and the spacing between slots will be the same everywhere. As always, I prefer relations to dimensions in case there is any change, like aligning those two edges. Then I create a rectangle that will control slot position. After the first vertical mirror, I continue with a slot in the corner, and I add equal relations again to avoid dimensions. A couple of mirrors later, most of the slots are done and I need to finish with the large one on the left. A relation again and a dimension for the spacing. After this last mirror, the first shape is ready. Now I want to make a pattern of this shape on each side, so I use this specific option of the pattern feature with the same dimension. I could have done only one side and finished with a mirror feature on the other side. The result would have been the same, but I could have saved one dimension. Too bad. Now I create holes as usual, but for that I create these diagonal lines, so I add only one dimension to position a hole. Of course, diameter is also needed. Again, to avoid doing the same on other holes, I create lines in the middle of each edge to create a sketch mirror for other 3 holes. Then the fillets, where I leverage xDesign assistance to propagate on other edges, and the same for chamfers. Front panel is finished, I can update the assembly to see the result. For side panels, I would like to mimic Death Star surface, in particular this venting hole for reference to Star Wars Episode 4. So let's go! As always, I start with a simple 2 mm extrusion where I add holes. No special efforts on these panels, so I add only 2 holes on the side. Then I mate the panel in place, again with a planar mate and 1 mm distance mates on the sides. I would like to create a trompe-l'oeil where it's difficult to say where panels are separated, so it won't be a straight line. I create a jog on the panel and I start creating rectangular shapes to represent assembly lines and buildings. Most of the shapes on Death Star are represented with extrusions and cuts, so I will create shapes with similar depths to ease the process. Here I use a very powerful feature in xDesign. I turn solid lines in reference lines just with cut tool and construction line switch. This way I don't lose references while removing sketch lines I don't need. Of course, I add draft angle to extrusions to add some perspective and some fillets before starting first cuts. Again, simple shapes that I cut with a draft angle. Then I would like to add main pipes to this plant. So I create a sweep and some high bosses at extremities for tanks. I even increase pipe size to show how important they all are. Second level of extrusions is created with less depth, but on the same level, including shapes on assembly lines. I also make a smaller pipe run through several shapes with a single sweep. I just need to add fillets on the sketch, so there is only one feature. After creating a hemisphere for temporary gas storage, I add some shapes on the assembly lines. I turn some simple extrusions into feeding systems with a draft angle, and I repeat the shapes on the other lines. We can imagine they have assembly lines to create droids and machines directly on site. Then I take care of some loading bays for T-fighters, just after fuel tank fed with main pipes. See how I create simple shapes to add pipes with thin extrusions. I also arrange some shapes on main circular plant built around mounting hole and I link those shapes with a pipe created again with a sweep. First panel is finished, let's move to the other one. I need to create complementary panels so they fit together, so I create a cut to fit with the jog. I add holes, fillets and chamfers, and I mate the part in place. Now let's continue our surface design with some large storage buildings linked with some corridors and some venting systems on the top with those simple extrusions. Next is the main feature of this panel, direct venting hole that leads to Death Star's inner core, and that will be used by Luke Skywalker to destroy it. I hope he's not around, so I create an hexagonal shape with a big draft angle, some extrusions and cuts. I also add this pattern around the hole to use venting system to cool down more surface. Then I add some structure to this hole to hide it more on the surface. I will create several shapes that will take advantage of the cooling system, like those big tunnels and maintenance corridors I create with some patterns. There will be some control rooms and surveillance systems around this hole, and they are created with some small shapes on the sides. Now the biggest feature of the panel is ready. I need to fill gaps with some more plants so the Empire can feed their garrisons based in this part of the spaceship. We will leverage heat drained by venting hole, given this works without air, but they have advanced technology, they must have this detail figured out. So there will be some food plants on the left and some water treatment plants on the right. As we are in space, everything is covered and works automatically with some droids. So there will be a greenhouse and some plants to transform crops into something ready to eat for soldiers. I use the same extrusion depths, so all additional extrusions and cuts will be created with a limited number of features. I also add some thin extrusions and sweeps to create corridors and pipes to connect all the buildings. Of course, there must be a lot of recycling so the spaceship can go anywhere without any supplies from the outside. Once this is done, I update the component in the assembly and the result is actually better than I expected. As always, this is now printing time. After that, I will fix front panels on the case with some screws. I take this opportunity to plug power plug cable behind the motherboard. I wish I could hide it, but this was not possible. Then I finish with side panels, they fit together perfectly, and I might add some paint in the future to create some texture and a bit of depth. This will conclude our episode today. In the next episode I will finish the case with transparent panels, including the one that supports SSD drives fixed with some spacing columns. If you want to create your own designs and bring them to life with a 3D printer, check out the SOLIDWORKS for Makers website to subscribe to xDesign at an incredibly affordable annual price. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.